Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host.
Quiet on the set.
Here at Below the Line, our coverage of the Oscars rolls on. All month, I'm hosting panels of film industry professionals to discuss the nominees and their category of expertise. And this is the 5th of 10 episodes. Today, we're talking about sound, and I've got two returning guests. Steve Morrow, you've been a production sound mixer for 30 years, and your credits include La La Land, A Star is Born, and Ford versus Ferrari. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And Don Sylvester, you've been a sound editor for over 30 years yourself, with credits including Walk the Line, The Hate You Give, and also Ford versus Ferrari. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Listeners, if you're curious to learn more about the credits of my guests, go to imdb.com. The podcast has its own page, so if you search for Below the Line, it's easy to click through the names of our guests and see what else they've done. Okay, we're off to the races. The 5 films nominated for sound for 2022 are All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar: The Way of Water, The Batman, Elvis, and Top Gun: Maverick. We're going to discuss them in that order, and spoilers are possible, so consider this awarding. I also say this every time, but it bears repeating. We like to recognize our below-the-line compatriots by name, even if it means I'm occasionally mispronouncing some of them. Apologies in advance. Now, lend us your ears. First up, All Quiet on the Western Front, and the nominated team is Victor Prasil, Frank Cruz, Marcus Stemler, Lars Ginzel, and Stefan Kort. Gentlemen, take it away.
I mean, talk about a movie in the mud. I mean, I saw that movie and I thought whoever survived making that film just deserves an award, just, maybe a participation award, but like an award that, I mean, you survived that. I just watched that movie. I thought the making of this had to be as hard as that looks. It looks cold, wet, damp. But I thought that movie-wise, it was, sounded incredible. And the score on top of the sound of the film was really impactful. Because when that score came up for the first time with that, electric guitar, it was just like my mind was blown. Not sure if it was an electric guitar, but that's what it felt like. But yeah, what a brutal story to take on, and I thought they did a great job. And the sound was is an epic, war film sound, just intense, and you felt the tanks coming.
We've talked before on this show about that mix between sound and score, and they're nominated for original score as well. And so I'm curious to hear also, Don, your thoughts on that and to dive a little deeper.
I felt this was a really strong performance by these sound dudes. Maybe they're not dudes, but yeah, they are. I thought it was really strong in every way. I thought it was very powerful. It really evoked the idea of what it's like to be there. I find that to be the number one criteria for good sound. If it takes you to a place that you've never been and you feel like you're there, I buy into that. I mean, they had a lot of great sounds that are not only in their face, but constantly going on in the background. It was unrelenting. When you're in the war, you were there 24 hours a day. And they also had some quiet moments. What I like about it is the dynamics that they exhibited in a war setting is always very powerful. And it's strictly limited to this character, his point of view. So a lot of this stuff is dangerous but distant, and you still get creeped out by the fact that could be coming any moment in your direction. The music itself added a great deal. In my opinion, the music really helped set the tone, which music does, of course. Good music.
Yeah,
it added to the somber feel of the place, and I thought they're a great pair together. They handed off to each other a lot.
And music did a lot of that, because it's like, where do you differentiate sometimes between the mix and the score? And this one did a good job kind of lending itself to both, but it did a lot of lifting as well,
People say when they find out we do sound for films, they go, well, I like that music. And it's, you run into the same sort of turf when you're in a film and the music is powerful and the sounds are powerful and they blend together, and people sometimes don't know the difference between them. And here's a good example of how they worked well together.
Yeah.
I would say All Quiet is probably my favorite so far.
It's definitely one of my favorite films of the year. When I saw it, I couldn't stop talking about it at work. I told everybody at work, you got to see this movie. and the end is just brutal, just brutal.
Yeah. And it's great if you speak German.
Which I don't, but
which I do. I do. And I was
very good.
In the current project I'm working on, there's a lot of German. So my German juices were flowing. And so this comes on and went, great, I get to do German at home now.
Ich spreche nur ein bisschen Deutsch.
Ausgezeichnet. Yeah. So, but it's good to pick up.
Did either of you have a chance to see it in the theater? Because I kind of put it off, not wanting to watch it on the side as a Netflix streamer until I could really get my full attention. And then when I did, I'm hoping that before the Oscars come out, there will be another theatrical release, because I'd love to see it on the big screen and fully surrounded by the sound.
Yeah, me too.
I saw it at home in Dolby Atmos, but that was, it's not going to compare to the theater experience.
We sound guys all put a fortune into our screening rooms at home, so we feel like we don't have to see it in the theater.
Well, all right. Well, next time one of you guys can host and we'll watch them all.
Sounds good.
We'll put a pin in that for next year. Moving on to our second film, Avatar: The Way of Water. And the nominated team is Julian Howarth, Gwendolyn Yates-Whittle, Dick Bernstein, Christopher Boyes, Gary Summers, and Michael Hedges.
I gotta say, Julian's a good guy. Had a lot of conversations with him. He's was on that film for 2 years and worked with James Cameron. So he, I'm sure went through it, because that's not a easy film probably to constantly stay engaged with when you're on it for 2 years. So I think that's, at least on the production side of it, so that was, and then they had water tanks to deal with and underwater sound. I had a conversation where they, would dive underwater, mic'd up, and then they would burst through the surface of the water, and the mics had to work, as soon as they came through the water. So they had some technical challenges that they had to, prepare for and come through on. The movie like that, where it's a lot of it is, it's on stage and recreated. So it's a lot of more of the sound editing side than the production side, but he was able to capture it all, which was, impressive, because there's a lot going on there, a lot of technology going on, which is not always quiet.
Let me ask you, Steve. So when you've got a production like this, it's really kind of unique. It looks to the final version as if it's animated.
Yeah.
But it's not. I mean, it is, but it's originally shot as actors on a stage, and they're mic'd up and they're reacting to each other, and they're running and jumping, and as you say, even swimming, right? So It's not an animated feature.
That's right.
Which makes it then, I think, viable for this category. Because what I don't like, and I've mentioned this before, is I feel that the animated movies have a greater advantage to having a good sounding soundtrack, because they don't have to clear away all the ambient noise and all the other things that are recorded during production. I mean, the animated sound is just in a studio to begin with, and so this was like on the very edge of me saying, well, maybe this is treated like an animated film.
I mean, I think you're definitely right on the sound design of it all, because you're right. I mean, you're dealing with tracks that are probably pretty clean and able to get booms in wherever you want and things like that. But I do think that there's probably the technical challenge of they're wearing these outfits that are cabled up, and they're on stages that have cameras everywhere, that there may be more ambient noise than it appears. And then you have scenes where they're yelling outside, but they're probably indoors on a motion capture stage. So there's probably some work to do to make that sound like they're outside versus just in a box. But yeah, I mean, it's an impressive feat if you can trick the audience into thinking they're in the middle of the ocean on a foreign planet, without it seeming like, oh, they're on a soundstage box.
Right. Well, as all our sound editors will agree, water is difficult. It's very harsh and brittle at times. Also, it's very samey. So to cut anything in water that makes it feel like you're actually in the water is really impressive. And this is full of water.
Yeah.
And water sound effects. And the guys that cut that stuff, they were not in water, I assume.
No, I don't think so.
So it's all pretty good stuff. And so I think they get a high mark for, I mean, they do great work. I think this was done in New Zealand, post-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And they do great work. And everything sounds really great. The question is it the greatest? And the only way we can determine whether it's the greatest sound this year is to destroy all the others and figure out what remains.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, right now, I can't destroy any of these, right? Because I think The Way of the Water was pretty darn good.
Yeah, I would agree.
and I gave it really high marks. Although
Yeah, it's a good sounding movie.
I don't know where it will rank on our list here.
Yeah, it's in my top 5 for this year.
For sound or for movies in general? Steve?
For sound, for sound, for
or
sound.
for the Oscar nominees. This is one of
Yeah,
your
the
top
Oscar
5.
nominees. It's in my top 5.
I have a question, gentlemen. I haven't been following the sort of behind the scenes with the sound category. I was surprised, and I don't know if I've ever seen 6 names nominated as a team. And so, again, we didn't read all the specific titles because it's just a lot of word jumble, and oftentimes they're wrong anyway on IMDb. That being said, does it seem unusual that so many people would be put forward on a single film?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if you have, I mean, it's a movie that took them years to make. So maybe there was, 50-50, coordination between. I'm just not sure how many. But I know that when the Academy combined it, there was the nervousness of saying, well, what if we have this person? Do we all get the same amount of trophies if we win? And I think that that's the answer. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing what used to be 2 categories, sound and I guess sound mixing and sound editing. I guess they're together now.
Yeah. I think, Don, you won the last award.
I broke it.
You broke it, so now you own it.
And they said, look, if we're giving this guy an award, this doesn't really seem to be a very...
My reverse was, wait a minute. Don won and we didn't for mixing us. Can we combine them so that we have a chance next time?
For my situation, it was a shame that the ones that are now combined didn't each win. And that's probably the problem with the having the 2 different categories, is you didn't know which category was the sound you're hearing. Were you hearing mixing, or were you hearing sound editing? So it made sense on one level to combine them, but then at the same time, they should have given us both the Oscars.
And we're talking about Ford versus Ferrari, for which you were both nominated, but in separate categories for listeners who are aware.
Right.
Well, it does make for easier podcast scheduling now that there's just one category in sound. So I didn't have anything to do with the decision, but again.
But you benefit from it. That's good. That's good.
All right. The third film on our list is The Batman, and the nominated team is Stuart Wilson, William Files, Douglas Murray, and Andy Nelson.
That was a fun movie. It's like DC reinvented the. Just starting, we don't get to see where he came from. We kind of all know that backstory, so it's a fun movie to jump right in the middle of his character and figure out who's with him and who's against him. But no, that's a heavy. There's a lot of sound, the wall of sound in that movie, which is well done because it doesn't tire you out. But great action, fun sequences. It's Batman in the rain, in the dark. It's good.
There's a really great overall soundscape to this, and what they've done is they've really capitalized on quietness. Many of these scenes are simply just 2 people talking on a rooftop or something like that, and it's very, very effective when you combine action and quiet together. There's a dynamic range that makes each one more effective. The Batman movie has a great signature sound, and that is the Batmobile. I think everybody agrees that the Batmobile was a pretty great moment in the film. It doesn't come into like 80 minutes in the movie, but it's still a great sound. And every kind of movie like this needs a signature sound or something that it says like, well, did you see this movie? The Batmobile sounded great. So they really accomplished one of my boxes I can cross for having a really good signature sound, a really excellent car chase. Really exciting, really well done, and then they've also got a lot of quiet moments too. So overall, it's a pretty good soundtrack, and I think students of sound would be wise to study this film, and you can see how you can make an action movie quiet. It's pretty effective.
Yeah, because when the action sequences are big, it's big.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They do have a lot of dull filters that they throw on things when things get really. It's an effect that is overused. And that is when somebody gets punched or something, all the sound gets dull.
And it has that high ringing.
Or they put in a tinnitus thing, which everybody enjoys. They do that a lot in Batman. They roll off some of the really more intense moments. They just roll off the high ends of the sound. They get really sort of dull and muddy. And it's a choice, a stylistic choice. I just think it's cliche, but I think it's effective. But as a sound guy, it's like hearing stuff over and over again in different movies, and they do that a lot in a lot of movies. I mean, you'll see a lot of movies where an explosion will happen and everything gets really muffled and quiet, and that's sort of a go-to.
I think they did that once or twice in All Quiet as well. That I went, oh, there it is again.
They didn't. No, they removed sound. So they featured.
Oh, you're right.
Within a short distance of this guy, and all the other sound just sort of went away. So it was almost like it was very selective in what it was performing or showing us. That's why I liked it a lot, because it didn't resort to this sort of. I was waiting for a bomb to explode and then there'd be tinnitus and then have ringing ears, and they didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
And so I was pleased. Yeah.
All right, the fourth film on our list is Elvis, and the nominated team is David Lee, Wayne Pashley, Andy Nelson, and Michael Keller.
Andy, 2 times this year.
Yeah.
Almost 3 times, but 2 times. No, I thought story-wise, it was fine with me, but I thought this was one of my favorite movies of the year sound-wise. I think it was the way that this sound was used to really portray some of these moments, I thought was fairly unique and interesting and kept me engaged. Story-wise, the story of Elvis is fine, but I liked the sound on this one. I liked the way that it drove the story forward and put you in the mindset of a lot of these people, a lot of these moments. For me, it was very effective.
I'd like to see a category where we compare musicals sound-wise.
Yeah.
Because, as I said before, a lot of people turn to us and say, oh, I like the sound of the movie you just worked on. Did that guy really sing? And you go, well, yeah, I mean, that's sound for sure. I mean, music is sound. I should know. I mean, we Walk the Line got a BAFTA, and that's a musical. So I guess music is sound, but music is also music. So I don't know my point is here, except that when you're watching Elvis, the sound is secondary to his performances, and it's very clever the way they've juxtaposed events and they put sounds in, but it's all within like a musical montage, combining different like musical genres that lay on top of each other and segue into each other, gospel and rock, and it's very, 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 very effective, very clever, and but it's music. I mean, there's 90% music. So
I did like a lot of the backgrounds, though. A lot of the backgrounds and effects. I just thought it was clever how they would pop in a lot of his fans and the backstage and the guy across the town giving his hate speech and things like that, where it was just bouncing all over. And at least for me, it brought me into the world going, oh, okay, this is more or less where he was, maybe where his mind was at the time.
Right. But I'm going to suggest that it's more than 50% music you're listening to most of the time. So nothing wrong with that.
No.
I'm a beneficiary of that, but it didn't have what I like to see in a movie, which is a signature sound. Maybe it was Austin Butler's voice. Maybe that was the signature sound, because a lot of people didn't believe he was singing. So well done. He really did pull it off. But,
did he sing on set on that one?
Yes, he did.
Oh, okay, very good. Yeah, amazing.
And he did it so much that he couldn't stop talking like Elvis for a month or two. So yeah, I mean, I like this movie a lot. I think it's really a fun ride, and it's musically great and sonically super. I just wonder if, because of it's mostly music, it could get knocked out of the park by somebody has a strong sonic, effects track.
Right.
Wayne Pashley, who was the re-recording mixer, sound designer, and supervising sound editor, he was actually a guest on the show. And one of the things he shared was that they went out of their way to get authentic equipment to capture the sound. Going through the whole process, when it finally comes to screen, do you think that really carries through, that effort up front?
You mean like on the production side of it?
Yeah, I heard they had the vintage mics and went to great lengths to have vintage recordings and things like that, which I think is fantastic. I have to ask Andy Nelson that, because he mixed that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to ask Andy Nelson that, because once you get these tracks into the console and they start mixing together, I don't know what he does to them. I'm not supposed to know, because he's going to be doing what each individual sound needs. and he may EQ it, he may compress it. I don't know what he'll do. So yes, on one level, the basic tracks themselves probably it's great to start with something that's authentic and reminds you of the era. But I don't know what Andy did with that stuff once he got it into the mix. I mean, once you sort of hear, you're going to hear like an orchestra or a band or something like that. That was recorded in another place, not with vintage microphones. So is it something you can EQ? You know, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I find it, anytime I've attempted to do something super authentic on set, just to do the extra work up front, and then once the reality of shooting sets in, some older mics are not made for modern sets where everything is RF and everything is going crazy. And all of a sudden you plug something in, there's no shielding because back in the day there just wasn't, and you're just getting hums and buzzes and ticks. And, but there are moments where you go, I'm glad I had something really running on the podium, or so some of it is definitely worth it. How much of it comes out at the end, that's the trick.
I think they were using the vintage mics when recording his music. I think that probably wasn't used on set.
Right.
It was probably when he went to do his vocals and vintage music stuff, which could very well sound great. Maybe the soundtrack reveals it better than like a CD of the soundtrack. Remember CDs?
Yeah, there's still CDs.
There are. Oh God.
I mean, I've heard of them.
Now, with the sound category, it's your peers who review the shortlist and vote to determine the finalists. But the winner is decided by the Academy at large. In the line of what you said before, Don, about the mix of music and sound in a film like this, do you think the fact that this movie has a musical theme might lead some Academy voters to select it as the best for sound?
What I think you're saying is, do people view this musical as sound rather than, when asked what good sound is, do they refer to musicals because they like the music? And I'm going to say yes. I think that many people say, man, that was a great sounding musical. It has the best sound because it had the best music. I mean, not a lot of people will probably say that.
Yeah, I think the honest is the nomination is by your peers, which is great. But the award goes to, it's a wider audience of Academy voters. So I think, sometimes the award is, everybody who's there nominated is there by the peers. But then at the end of the day, it's like, maybe it was, whoever, Elvis created the best memory of, the majority of the Academy members, or, or the fog of war, or whatever it is. So I think it's always a grain of sand who wins, but it's always, it's an honor to, it's one of those things where it's like an honor to be nominated because it's your peers got you there. Your work got you there.
I think some of the concerts in the movie, which include crowds and sound effects, things like that, are just great, fantastic. I mean, you're really like doing crowds is another thing, which has to go with the music. So crowds are extremely. It's dialogue. It's basically dialogue with a group of people, and you have to make sure that they're saying what you want them to say when they say it, in the form of cheering and clapping and things like that. And I did a period piece where they had crowds in it, and we had to make sure they didn't shout out certain common phrases that are common today but weren't common in the 50s.
I mean, a good crowd, you don't notice. A bad crowd sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Just like where is this crowd from?
So that's a massive amount of sound work in there. So I'm just going to temper what I said about musicals. That I'm not trying to say musicals are not good sound vehicles, because they bring with them all the crowds and all the venues and the places that they are. And when he's playing in Las Vegas, it sounds different than when he's playing in another place, and it should, and it's great, and the crowd is amazing. So I really think this is a great job and deserves to be on this list.
Well, our fifth and final film is Top Gun Maverick, and the team is Mark Weingarten, James H. Mather, Al Nelson, Chris Burden, and Mark Taylor. I
mean, it's a crowd pleaser. It's a sequel 30 years later. It's a fun movie to watch when you like the original. I love some of the internet theories on that he actually dies right at the beginning when the Mach 10 hits and his plane explodes, and then the rest of the movie it's his redemption before heaven going through.
I didn't see that version.
I just love, some of the online theories are great.
It's a theme that keeps
But,
coming up with this one. Yes.
He can't die. What about Top Gun 3?
well, Top Gun 3: The Resurrection. Titanic 2. Anyway. No, I mean it's a great sounding movie. It had to be a blast to make that movie with the in-flight cameras, and I would have loved to ask Mark how much of the dialogue in the cockpit survived, or was it all, post-recorded? You think zero?
I think zero.
Zero. Yeah.
I think zero. I think if I was tasked with doing that, I think everything would be re-recorded because, frankly, I know the actors did a lot of this stuff in their jets. I know it was recorded on the day, but it's such a noisy place, and when you're pumping up that dialogue among the jet sounds, you need to have it clean, and also. They didn't see their mouths moving, so they could say whatever you wanted. So you could change whatever you want from, like I'm going in to I'm going out, important stuff like that. So I suspect that this was re-recorded. But I do think that this was a perfect sort of. It broke the pandemic. It was one of the ones that made people get out of their house and go to movies, and it was like the feel-good film of the year, and it had all the same songs.
Fun to watch, fun to listen to,
and it didn't harm anybody. It just basically, big character arcs, and it's just a feel good movie. And then it helped because of the nostalgia that it effectively evoked, and it was just a good old fashioned film, and I think it deserves all the praise it can get.
Yeah, it was a fun ride. Sounded amazing. When you talked, Don, about like the signature sound, that's hard to find in that movie, but it's like, it doesn't take away from the emotion of just watching it and having fun and having the general popcorn movie where it's just a fun movie to watch.
Well, I think the jets were pretty much a signature sound. I mean, some of the takeoffs were delicious,
But different from what you've heard in the past, or no?
It doesn't have to be different for me. It has to just ring true, and it just has to be effective. And some of these jets actually had personalities. I mean, in my feeling,
yeah, that's true, and it does ring true. It does, it feels right. Nothing feels forced.
Right.
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, when I say signature sound, I mean signature to the movie. I mean, this is the sound that you think when you hear the sound, you think, well, I heard that in this movie, and I think that these jets they're probably originally recorded. I think they went out and recorded a lot of these jets. And I think when you hear jets that are so well done, you'll think of this movie.
Yeah, true.
Now, Steve, when you were here before, when we talked about Ghostbusters Afterlife, there was this idea that the sounds of the original need to be present in the new version. That's part of the nostalgia. Either of you, do you think that there's a similar effort underway with Top Gun Maverick to revisit those sounds and to bring them up, or are jet sounds so ubiquitous that the original sounds are not as relevant in this case?
Well, I mean, I think you have some of the original music and some of the original, title sequence on the carrier. All those things are, lent to make the audience feel like, okay, I know where I am. So I think it does do that. I think that is the, like anytime you have something like that where you've waited decades to see it. I remember we remade a movie called Fame that, I don't know, 15 years ago from a movie that was made in the 80s. And, there was talk on set about not using the original song, Fame in the movie. It was such like a crazy idea because I'm like, no, that's if you want the audience to like, get on board, if you don't have that song, you're going to lose them. Like we ended up putting it, I think, at the end of the movie with the montage, throughout the movie filming, we would film, after a big music sequence, we'd play the song and we'd have a bunch of people dancing to it. And it's like, you got to have that in the movie or else the audience is going to walk out going, oh, I feel cheated. So I think that's the same vibe that you have with Top Gun. If you didn't have the original songs in there and some of the original stuff, it's like, what was the point? You got to have the guy who's, got the attitude and the sunglasses and chewing on a stick or else, you don't have the original characters.
I think this movie was like a tourist in Hollywood. I mean, everybody wants to see the sights, and they showed us all the sights. I mean, there was playing football on the beach. Yeah, check. You know,
Exactly. Doing the impossible, pulling the G's. The guy's gonna. It's just like, all right, this is perfect.
Yeah.
You know, it's a perfect
landing when behind enemy lines. You don't do that,
right.
but we do.
And then, hey, look, you know, we got the Tomcat back. We had to see that. You know, how are we going to get that back in there? Oh, they happen to have one. It works perfectly.
Just
It's fueled up, ready to go.
It's got clever written all over it. It's really good.
Yeah, it's perfect.
At no point do I think anybody is going to die. I mean,
no,
I don't want to give anything away to the guy out there who hasn't seen it. No, his girlfriend hasn't seen it. He's seen it.
But this does remind me of Ford versus Ferrari on some level, where they're not actually flying an F-14.
Wait, what?
Is there a unique sound to an F-14 that someone is recreating in post on for something like this? Again, much like where the cars were not the actual engines from the time period in Ford versus Ferrari, right? Those are sounds that you brought in later because the original couldn't be captured on set.
That's right.
I'm going to say yes, that there is a F-14 sound. And I'm going to say that maybe F-14 pilots are the ones that will tell you that's not an F-14 sound. I don't know if anybody else will. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I didn't talk to these guys, but I'm pretty sure they were pretty accurate with this equipment that they're using up there. So yeah, there's an F-14, and I'm not sure where they got them or what they did, but I'm going to guess that it's pretty accurate.
And I didn't ask to take anything away from the movie. I also enjoyed this film. I thought they nailed the assignment, and it delivered on all engines, if you will. But
that's right.
Nice.
I like it. Nailed the assignment. That's what I'm going to tell my crew tomorrow. All right, good day, guys. You nailed the assignment. That's my favorite.
All right, guys. Well, those are our 5. Are there any other 2022 films you thought were noteworthy of sound? Maybe something on the short list that didn't make it over, or just other things that caught your ear?
You mean besides Babylon?
Look, Babylon was an epic movie. Didn't make the list, but that's okay.
And Steve, we're going to have you back to talk about Babylon because I do want to know what was going on behind the scenes of that.
Oh, we have good stories on that one.
Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it.
Oh, yeah, you're not
come back and talk about it.
You're not going to want to miss that episode.
We'll put that out as a teaser.
Yeah.
I will say, because I won't be on that particular episode, I fear.
No, you can come back. You can give your 2 cents. Okay, all right.
It's fine. It's fine. I don't want to steal your thunder. Babylon was great. Very good. Under difficult circumstances, I'm sure. And it's really a noteworthy film on many levels, and the sound's certainly good. So, yeah. Congratulations. That's great.
Thanks.
I would actually like to nominate Triangle of Sadness. I thought that was an amazing sounding film, and I thought the idea of the ship slowly sinking over 15 minutes was pretty great. That's a spoiler, but it is.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
I think the preview spoils that, so I think we're probably on same grounds there.
Oh, okay, great. All right. Okay. Well, as long as you put the spoiler in the beginning of the episode.
Yeah. I like movies that have sound that are really storytelling components. And it just was hilarious. The sinking ship was hilarious, just hilarious.
You've got the noise of the ship. You also have water issues there again, right? All of these sort of subtle sounds that are, to your point earlier, Don, transport someone to the location and make them feel like they're actually there.
Which is my number one goal in any sort of sound judgment, is to say, does this take me to a place where I either, do I know the sound? Have I been there? And does it sound like that place? And if it does, great. But if it's a new place, like I could never have been, like World War I.
Yeah, who's to say?
Yeah, it's like, that's even better for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed all the films that were nominated this year. There's some years where I go, I don't get that. But this year, I get it. I get all the films. They're fun. I mean, to listen to. I'm not saying All Quiet on the Western Front was a fun family movie, but it was I enjoyed each one of these movies.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll call it a wrap. Always informative to have you guys on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
We're gonna vote?
Did we complete the assignment?
Aren't we going to vote?
Yeah. Put your just hold up your fingers.
I forget which order they were in.
Oh, well, then your vote won't count.
I'm going to vote. Can I vote?
First of all, as an aside, you don't want me saying what you actually are choosing
No.
on the podcast. Is that
Oh,
right?
this is just for entertainment purposes. I was just trying to.
Okay.
You'll have to bleep out our vote.
Once I've captured the sound, I can do anything I want with it. Yeah, Don, I'm curious. What are you guys going for?
I can't tell you now.
Yeah, well, that's embarrassing.
You guys ready to move on? I want to give room for everybody's gibberish, and I'll fix it in post so there's everybody gets their say. But I don't want to
That's all we do.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. I love it. Listeners, I always appreciate your feedback. You'll find my contact info at our website, belowtheline.oneword.biz. That's B-I-Z. We're now halfway through our Oscar coverage, and I hope we've earned your subscription. Thanks to Curtis Five for our music and John Wan for our logo. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. To all of our listeners, I appreciate you. Please rate us wherever you get your podcasts and tell your friends. Thanks again from Below the Line.